Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, it's not just the two of us tonight. Me and Dylan. Eric will be joining us shortly here. But for right now, though, I am Joe Szymanski. So far, joined tonight by Dylan Brown. Welcome, folks, to a live night of streaming. It is a big night, that is for sure. We have live streams not only on our YouTube and our Twitter, but also now officially on Twitch. We were planning on doing a little bit more there soon. Hopefully we're trying to do some little political game nights. I know Dylan is very, very excited about that possibility, but for tonight, we know what we're focused on. We know what we're looking at. State of Maryland, the polls have closed. It is 8 o'clock Eastern time. Dylan, obviously, you know some of the key races. Obviously, looking at both primaries for governor, as current popular incumbent Republican Larry Hogan is retiring. On the Democratic side, I know you're more of a left-wing Democrat yourself, but obviously knowing the state of Maryland is not necessarily a big haven for true left-wing liberalism here. Obviously, it looks like the top three is going to be somewhat of Wes Moore, current comptroller Peter Franchot, and former DNC chairman Tom Perez. You know, looking at what do you think are kind of the key areas that these guys need to perform well in? To see who's going to come out on top in what is a very large field for this open primary.
Well, look, I don't know geography super well. That's not. I don't know my own state's geography very well, but I am fully expecting Peter Franchot to come in a little bit under where I think he's. I think people are expecting him to win. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know that he's going to come in like third or fourth, but I don't think he's going to be the winner tonight. I do think it's going to end up being Tom Perez. He has most of the establishment connections. He seems to have gotten as much of a progressive coalescing as you can really call it in the state. As you said, it's not a very progressive friendly state on the whole, but I think Tom Perez is as close to a left-wing progressive as you're really going to get statewide when everyone is trying.
Yeah,
hello, Eric.
Absolutely. As our glorious editor-in-chief, Eric Cunningham, now joins us for the night.
Yep.
Eric, obviously, we were just talking about the Democratic primary here. Republican primary, it's a little bit simpler. It's looking like there are a couple candidates. There are 4 candidates, but it's looking like it's a 1v1 race here. Former Hogan Labor Secretary Kelly Schultz versus Dan Cox, a very significantly more right-wing delegate who is a big-time election denier. We are still waiting for our first votes in Maryland. But while we're waiting for that, though, right now, Eric, kind of what are you looking for? What are the key areas for Republicans tonight to look at in that governor's race statewide and say, where's going to be the key areas for them to look at?
Yeah, well, obviously, Maryland is a kind of strange state for Republicans in that they have areas they do really, really well in. They have the western portion, they have the eastern shore, and there's probably some ancestral Republican voters around like, for example, the Anne Arundel area, Anne Arundel County, which would be Annapolis. So those would be interesting areas to look at. I don't know the exact proportion that comes from those western counties compared to those, in those western counties compared to those earlier, places, even like Montgomery. I think I saw a graphic, like, for example, that, we expected Montgomery would deliver a lot of votes for Republicans, even though it's a third of the district, it's not going to be a third of the votes, but it could still be like 10% of the votes, 15% of the votes, which would be fairly, that could be fairly useful. So I'd be interested to see how those urban areas compare to those rural areas. Obviously, Larry Hogan is very, very, very popular, beyond popular. But yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Dylan. Please go ahead.
I'm actually interested in the Republican primary here, too, because Trump's endorsements in gubernatorial races have not gone super well for him. He lost out, obviously, in Nebraska, Georgia. I believe the only state his gubernatorial pick has won in is Pennsylvania. So I'm curious to see if Maryland, of all places, will break the streak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see tonight. But also there are some key House primaries to look at. First, with the safe Democratic one in the 4th district. This is a majority African American seat. This is a very safely Democratic seat. Anthony Brown, who is most notoriously known for being the person who lost to Larry Hogan in 2014, that allowed Hogan to gain the governorship. But otherwise, looking at things here, this seems to be a race between Donna Edwards, who's looking to produce a comeback, and Glenn Ivey. Yes, I was right in thinking it was Glenn Ivey was the name, but Glenn Ivey seems to be between those two candidates right here. Edwards taking a slightly more left-wing stance, Ivey taking a little bit more of the establishment stance. He's also been endorsed by AIPAC, who has been a big player in a couple of key Democratic primaries this year so far. Dylan, for sure, knows that horse race very, very well. So again, we're kind of seeing the influence of AIPAC tonight. This is the I believe the Israeli kind of support backed pack there for Democrats.
Should remind them of that. They're not really running ads on Israel.
It is true, but otherwise here, this will be an interesting race itself here. Kind of this very interesting kind of. It's a bigger field, but it really does seem to come down to between Ivey and Edwards here. I'll go to Eric here first. This is basically, if you look at the district here, it's basically all of Prince George's County. Eric, I know you mentioned on the show on Friday, there is kind of this interesting thing about Prince George's, in which it is not only is it very heavily African American, but it's also one of the wealthiest majority African American counties in the country.
Yeah, it would be by far the most wealthy African American majority county in the country. 5 of its communities are in a top 10 list of, I believe, of richest Black communities in the United States. Obviously, this is an absurdly Democratic county. This county is roughly right now. The county is. Sorry, let me pull up the data here. Trying to find the exact demographic data here for you, but it is majority Black. It is, as of the 2020 census, it's about 59% Black, 21% Hispanic, and then 11% white. So if we look at the presidential results, this is a county that went 89-9 for Joe Biden. That's a lot. Republicans have not won this county since 1972. They've not hit over 40% since 1984. They've not hit over 20% since 1996. This is just a disastrous county for Republicans. But in terms of vote, it is very affluent. It is very wealthy. This is where you get a lot of even some prominent Democrats from the Washington area come from Prince George's County. Kevin Durant, for example, grew up in Prince George's County. He's not a politician, but he's a fairly influential, basketball player. Larry Hogan is actually grew up in Landover. So there's a lot of areas here that are interesting. One thing I would say is that just looking at this, the difference between DC and Baltimore. In the past, Baltimore has really taken kind of the lead in the Maryland Democratic establishment. The previous congressional districts drawn in the last decade were drawn to protect Baltimore area Democratic incumbents from the potential of DC area challengers. So as these counties continue to grow, as Prince George's continues to grow, I believe it's nearing 1 million residents. If it's not, it's pretty close. Yeah, right now it's got 967,000 residents, which is a lot. So this is nearing 1 million people. You can only hold off this for so long. So I would expect areas like Prince George's to play a bigger role going forward compared to like Baltimore County, which are declining more in population than these sort of booming DC suburbs are.
Yeah, absolutely. But also we're watching a very, very interesting race in the newly drawn Maryland 6th congressional district. Obviously, of course, with the failure of kind of the Maryland Democratic gerrymander to hold up in court. Obviously, that was a big battle back in the spring where we saw Larry Hogan successfully fight to create a more fair map in the state of Maryland that basically saved the seat of the Eastern Shore seat of Andy Harris. It no longer drew in Annapolis, and now is its typical Eastern Shore plus Hartford, form that most people kind of do when they look at a fair map of Maryland. But also the new 6th district, the Western Bay seat, still is about a Biden plus 10, but it was only about a Clinton plus 1 seat. Takes in some takes in the much more conservative areas among Frederick now, and takes in a lot less of a very blue Montgomery County, another one of those DC suburb areas than it did back in 2020 throughout the decade there in the 2010s. So again, interesting primary here. Again, multiple candidates, but we've come down seem to really 1v1 here. 2020 nominee and current delegate Neil Parrott versus, and this is probably one of the more interesting Republican candidates I think we could argue for this cycle, former Washington Free Beacon journalist and 25-year-old Matthew Foldy. And you would be surprised to see that this 25-year-old has gotten quite a lot of endorsements from big name individuals, including current Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, I forget what her position is exactly, but I believe current conference chair, I believe his position, Elise Stefanik. Don Bacon has endorsed Foldy. Donald Trump Jr. has endorsed Matt Foldy. And Larry Hogan has also endorsed Matt Foldy. And it's certainly a weird combination. You certainly usually do not see Trump Jr. and Larry Hogan endorsing the same candidate normally. But they have in this situation. It'll be really interesting to see, I think, at least in my opinion, kind of whether those endorsements will matter at all when it comes to Foldy's race tonight. Eric, I'll go to you again here first. Probably the most interesting congressional primary of the night, potentially, this Foldy versus Parrott race. Kind of what's been your thoughts on it so far? Because this is a race that has kind of taken over parts of our section of Twitter.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Obviously, Foldy is a really interesting candidate. He's focusing heavily on, obviously, he came to play as a journalist for the Washington Free Beacon, being tied in heavily with Comfortably Smug, among other things, infamous Twitter provocateur. Depending on who you ask, he's either a really, really great, influential Republican thinker or someone who people still go back to the New York floods thing, New York hurricane thing. He basically has some detractors, but he's pretty influential in Republican circles. Foley's focused really heavily on Trone not having offices open. This is important for a couple of reasons, because obviously Trone does not live in the district. He's never lived in the district. He basically bought his spot in the Democratic primary in the district after trying to primary someone else. He went into this open seat when John Delaney retired, a more moderate Democrat, won the election, won the old version previously, underperformed Biden a little bit. He underperformed Clinton, and then Biden by small margins, not massive ones, but small ones. Really what's interesting, though, is this is kind of 3 different congressional districts in one. So I kind of want to show you what I'm talking about here. I know I showed this on the elections weekly stream, but I wanted to kind of see if, come on. Sorry, I'm grabbing my, all right, here we go. You can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. So you'll notice here, this district can be comprised into 3 parts. Let's go ahead and also turn off these population data sets because I don't care about them. And voting age population. I really don't care about this stuff. I just want to look at the political data. So part 1 of the district, all of these are about a third of the population of the district. So this portion, these 3 counties right here, these are basically West Virginia. Like they're right on the West Virginia line. There's very little reason these are part of Maryland, aside from history. But these are very, very West Virginia-esque counties. These 3 counties voted for former President Donald Trump by about a 31-point margin. In the governor race, they voted for Larry Hogan by a 60-point margin. Even in the Senate race in 2018, they voted for the Republican by 21 points. They voted for nearly a 40-point margin for Donald Trump in 2016. So these are this is a really, really staunchly Republican area. On the exact other end is this Montgomery County portion right here. This portion is, again, about a third of the district. It voted for Joe Biden by a 50-point margin. It didn't even back Larry Hogan in 2018. That's how Democratic this portion of the district is. This is absurdly Democratic. The middle portion, though, is the interesting part. This is Frederick County. Frederick County voted for Joe Biden by about 10 points, but it has been traditionally more Republican. This voted for Donald Trump by 2 points, and it's generally voted for Republicans in, for example, the gubernatorial race, nearly in the attorney general, and even in the Senate race. They didn't do that poorly with a bad nominee and an independent candidate on the ticket. And this is the most important part. So what does this mean? Basically, you're running in 3 separate seats. You're running in one portion, which is essentially West Virginia. with about the political partisanship you would expect of West Virginia. I think you could argue that Hagerstown in particular is kind of trending a bit more the same way Frederick is. You'll notice here Hagerstown itself is more Democratic than a lot of the area. And then Washington County as a whole is only a Trump plus 21 county. This is closer to Jefferson County in West Virginia. You have this Democratic portion, then you have this swing area in the middle. So what do we expect here? Well, what we expect here is simple. In order for Republicans to win the seat in November, they'll need to win Montgomery County by about 4 to 5.
Not Montgomery County, Frederick County.
Oh, not Montgomery, Frederick County, by about 4 to 5 percentage points. The question for Republicans then is which candidate can do better in winning back those Frederick County voters. These are suburban voters to an extent, but they're not the Montgomery County crowd. They're still a bit further out. They're still a little bit divorced from the Democratic scene in some ways, and they're only trending that way. They're not at a plus 50 margin. So Parrott is from the western portion of the district. He's from those 3 West Virginia adjacent counties. He fought heavily for a fairer map, and probably should be commended for his efforts if you're a Republican. The question is whether or not he can win those margins in Frederick County. Matthew Foldy is from those DC area portions. I believe he's from Montgomery County, right? He's not even from he's from Montgomery County, so he's from the more Democratic portion of the seat. On the other hand, he's kind of untested. He has that political Twitter sort of mantle holding over his head. We don't know a lot about him. We do know he's running an energetic campaign. If I were voting in the primary, I would probably go for Foldy, but I think you can make a reasonable case for Parrott as well. Parrott could probably run a really strong margin in those 3 western counties. If turnout gets low enough, if you have some of those, if that Montgomery County portion doesn't turn out as much, if it swings back a little bit, if Frederick swings back, those votes could matter in those western counties. But if you're looking for something newer, something that's more suburban, more in character with the tone of the rest of the district, the other 2/3, I think Foldy arguably falls more in that line. I think that's why Larry Hogan endorsed Foldy in this primary over Parrott, who again, Parrott is a known Republican in Massachusetts. He fought pretty heavily for this map. I think in a lot of circumstances, Larry Hogan would endorse someone like Neil Parrott. But I think Republicans are willing to take the risk on Foldy. This is still only a Clinton plus 1 seat. I think when we're saying that you need to win by about 4 or 5, you can make a case that we need to be closer to 3 or 4, assuming the trends are exactly the same as 2016. So it really just kind of depends on who can mobilize better in November. This is by far the most important of the primaries Republicans are going to be paying attention to, even more than the governor race, which is still at best a likely Democratic race, at best for Republicans. This seat is closer to a toss-up if you have a good candidate here. And Republicans have made a run here in a more Democratic version of the seat. They nearly won it in 2014 with Dan Bongino as the candidate. If that doesn't tell you how volatile this area can be, you're not paying a whole lot of attention. That was a seat that voted for Clinton by 20 points. So for comparison, it's a much more Democratic environment back then, a much more Democratic seat. So I think Republicans like their odds here. If you have Foldy, but I think they'd like their odds a little bit less, but they'd still be pretty confident they could at least make a run at it with Parrott.
Yeah, absolutely. This sadly, folks, as it seems to be the case with Maryland, usually they count even their election day votes at a snail's pace here. We are still waiting for our first results out of Maryland about nearly 20 minutes after polls closed in the state. But of course, we're only getting election day votes, and I want to hear from the both of you on this. Maryland rules that they cannot count any absentee or mail-in ballots until the day after election day vote. And of course, a state like Maryland, where it has a significant Democratic population in this day and age, will have a significant mail-in vote. Watching both statewide races tonight, and of course, and as well as the Attorney General's primary for the Democrats in Maryland as well. Watching both of those things tonight, looking at that, what do you think? What are the margins that certain candidates might have to hit to secure their victory tonight? If it doesn't seem certain, without it being uncertain with the mail-in ballot still being out there. I'll go to Dylan first on that.
I'm sorry, my internet cut out a little bit. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So Maryland has a law that any mail-in or absentee ballots cannot be counted until the day after Election Day, because for whatever reason, that rule has not yet been changed. It was attempted to be changed, but due to fighting between Governor Hogan and the Maryland legislature, that did not go through. So with that in mind, looking at things here, what do you think? What are the margins certain candidates you think have to hit without having to worry about those mail-in ballots, and kind of what problems will this cause tonight as well with those mail-in ballots? Again, this is Maryland, deep blue state. There are going to be, especially in the Democratic side of thing, a lot more mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
Give me an answer to those two questions.
So I think the most likely, I think actually the most likely election where this will be a problem is in the Republican primary for governor. If Dan Cox is winning on the election night votes but loses because of late arriving mail-in ballots, that's going to cause a problem. That's going to be a cluster. Yeah, I actually don't think the Democratic primaries, besides maybe the gubernatorial primary, I don't think any of the others are going to be all that close. I expect Glenn Ivey to win fairly comfortably over Donna Edwards, at least by enough that the mail-in ballots probably wouldn't change anything. And you got to, in those Democratic primaries especially, the mail-in ballots are typically older. What we've seen is they're older. They're more, I don't want to say establishment, but that feels like the best word to describe the mail-in ballots. They favor the incumbent more. They favor the establishment-backed candidate more. So I would expect that if anything is going to happen in the 4th district, it might be that Glenn Ivey expands his margin just a little bit from the mail-in votes, but I don't expect that to change anything. In the gubernatorial race, I don't know who the mail-in ballots would favor, honestly. The three leading candidates, Wes Moore, Peter Franco, and
Tom Perez.
Thank you. I kept wanting to say Tom Cavanaugh. Very different person. I do expect them all to be fairly close in vote percentage, but I don't have a clear read on who the mail-in ballots would favor, so I feel like that could easily end up being a wash.
Well, let's think about it this way.
Same questions to you here, Eric.
So I think, we don't know what percentage of the ballot. Do we know what percentage of ballots have been cast mail-in and not? I guess that's the big question here.
I don't know if we know that for sure.
That's why
if I were Dan Cox and it was within 5, I'd be concerned. I would also be concerned about Trump's inevitable meltdown if somehow Dan Cox is leading on election night and then the late votes, the mail-in votes come in and switch it to Schultz. He would melt down.
I would be concerned about Dan Cox's meltdown.
That would be an interesting thing to look at. I think you would have some odd claims of Republican election fraud, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be very strange to see that. Put it lightly.
If you ask Blake Neely down in Arizona, there's Republican voter fraud going on all the time. I mean,
so the way I would look at it,
tonight. Let's not touch with that tonight.
Yeah, but I would. But I mean, and the also thing is we don't know how the difference will be mail-in an election day. Usually, it's going for the more conservative candidate, but in a lot of races, that's obvious. Who is the more conservative candidate, Neil Parrott or Matthew Foley? I think you can make a reasonable case for either. The question is who's more electable in that race. I think both. I don't think there's a whole lot of intellectual difference between Neil Parrott and Matt Foley. It's just a question of how people vote and how they talk. So I actually don't know if it matters too much on the Democratic side.
Sorry, somebody in the chat just said that there were 40,000 mail-in ballots for Republicans and 170,000 for Democrats. As of yesterday.
Interesting. Okay, so that would be interesting to look at. That would be interesting. I don't know how many actual Republican votes happened.
Yeah, at 40,000, my guess is that wouldn't matter much in the Republican primary.
Well, you got it. This is Maryland, Dylan. We have to remember there are not that many registered Republicans here.
Fair.
Mhm.
And
Very fair.
I believe Maryland's party process is party controlled. I do not remember if independents can vote in or not. And if I would think to say that if independents could, they would almost certainly be more likely to go for Hogan. For Hogan's backed candidate, Schultz, I should say. Excuse me.
I agree. I tend to agree.
So, that's kind of the interesting thing we've got going there. I should say, do not it is a closed primary. So, with how little actual registered Republicans there are in the state of Maryland, I would not underestimate the potential effect of 40 to 45,000 mail-in ballots from Republicans. I would not underestimate that effect by any means. I believe I've been hearing we might be seeing a drop start seeing numbers around 8:30 potentially. There's some talk that Maryland, they are giving people about 30 minutes of time to make sure people are out of line before things start reporting. So hopefully very soon, we will see some results here.
Mm-hmm. And yes, Jonathan, Larry Hogan has endorsed a Maryland 6. He endorsed Matthew Foley in that race.
I mean, look, you can't discount having run for prior office, but I feel like Foley's got that locked up. He has both wings of the party. He has the entire national establishment.
In theory, but I've seen stranger things happen. Again, we don't know what percentage of the vote comes from that Western Maryland strongholds, what percentage is coming from the suburbs. I would think it could be reasonably coastal. I wouldn't be surprised if Foley breaks this out fairly substantially, although, again, Twitter is not real life. He's gotten a lot of endorsements, but we've in the past seen candidates with a lot of endorsements still lose primaries. Like, for example, a certain Connor Lamb from Pennsylvania got a lot of really, really important endorsements, and he still lost his primary.
Okay, but Connor Lamb didn't run a campaign.
That's fair. But, yeah.
He's got a point there, Eric.
Connor Lamb had money, but he didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end, did he really even have money?
I mean, he did. I think he had like $1 million in the bank at one point.
Yeah, but didn't Fetterman have like 11 million in the bank?
Well, you know what? That is a problem that was happening 2 months ago. So, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do there? Anyways, we are still waiting for results in Maryland. Hopefully, I'm kind of crossing my fingers here, and I'm kind of hoping here that we see some results here in the next 3 to 5 minutes here shortly. Hopefully start to see some results out of the state of Maryland, because that's the thing when there's only one state, folks. Sometimes there's only a finite amount of races you can focus on before you start going a little bit stir crazy.
Yes.
But however, though, I do want to talk about one last interesting Democratic primary tonight. The Attorney General's primary, the formerly mentioned Anthony Brown, again, mostly well known. He is the current representative of Maryland's 4th Congressional District. But again, he is mostly well known for being the guy who lost to Larry Hogan in 2014. Brown is looking at a comeback statewide. He is looking to run for Attorney General, but he is going against the wife of former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, Katie Curran O'Malley, in this 1v1 race tonight. Interesting race to be seen in here tonight, potentially two on the Democratic side. Again, do you think, go to Dylan here first. Do you think O'Malley can replicate some of her husband's buy-in with the voters around Baltimore specifically, considering he used to be mayor there?
No, I think this is the definition of Anthony Brown's race to lose. If he loses tonight, it will be. It will rise. Somebody in the chat asked if Lamb's campaign has the chance to be one of the worst run this cycle. Yes, but if Anthony Brown loses this Attorney General race, Anthony Brown will have just made a very compelling case for his own campaign. He has all the money, all the endorsements. He got all the media attention. I didn't even know O'Malley was running until I read a breakdown this morning.
That type of thing.
Yeah. So look, I'm not the barometer. I don't know a lot of things. But I'm not seeing it. I think this really is Brown's race to lose.
That's pretty fair, Eric. Are you kind of in that same mindset there when it comes to this race, or what else are you looking
Mhm.
at here?
Yeah, I would fall into the same camp. I think I would say that if Brown loses this, it's I don't know why. I don't know why state parties. I don't know why these parties, for some reason, in safe states, insist on nominating candidates who have already lost.
I
That
agree.
just why
don't
would
like-
you do that?
I don't like
Cri-
state parties endorsing candidates in safe races, period.
Yeah, Chris Kobach, he lost in Kansas, a race for governor. There's a chance he could be the attorney general nominee. Is he going to lose? Probably not. Why would you? But he already lost statewide. Why would you want him to be the nominee for anything ever again? Massachusetts had this with Martha Coakley. She lost the Senate race in Massachusetts. What was her? The normal response would have been a public flogging and banishing her to the gutter because she lost a federal race in Maryland as a Democrat. Instead, she's the gubernatorial nominee in 2018 or 2014, and she lost. Like,
And isn't
don't
she about
nominate
to be our
losers.
nominee again?
No, that would be the current attorney general. I think what's her name?
Maura
Maura
Healey.
Healey,
I
different
don't know
person.
why I get
Yeah,
those
different
two
person.
mixed up.
Because
No, Martha
they are
Coakley
the
is the-
same person, except Healy's a little bit more popular.
Martha Coakley is the Juul lobbyist now.
Oh, okay. Somebody who's loathsome for
Yeah.
another
So
reason.
just the end of my rant here. Parties. You are in a safe state. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of credible people you could nominate for these positions. Stop nominating losers. They lost. This would be the end of their career.
Eric and I
I'm
will
even a Democrat.
Eric and I will very rarely agree. Here.
Yeah, I'm not even a Democrat, and I'm just looking at this like, you should not be letting this person anywhere near a statewide office. Like,
Like, okay.
they're not going to
I
lose,
think-
but you know it's an inevitable springboard for another gubernatorial run. That's the only thing
Now-
it could be.
Now, let me play devil's advocate in favor of Anthony Brown. He lost to an incredibly popular governor in a Republican-leaning year.
But he wasn't. No, Anthony Brown was not the nominee in 2018. That was Ben Jealous.
No, in 2014.
Larry Hogan was not the incumbent governor in 2014.
Oh, I thought he was. Okay.
No.
Nope. This is
Oh,
a first-time
okay.
run from Larry Hogan, who ran solely
Never
on a
mind.
rain tax.
My defense has been withdrawn.
Your defense has been decimated and destroyed in record time.
Yes, my defense is withdrawn.
There's
No
no
devil's
excuse.
advocate. Anthony Brown sucks, and he needs to not be run statewide again.
Well, when someone is running for an office like this, right? You think his end goal is like, I'm going to be the attorney general. I just love being the attorney. And he wants to run for governor again. Why would you give him that shot if you're a Maryland Democrat? He lost a gubernatorial race in Maryland.
Eric, have you not seen the Democratic Party? This is kind
I
of.
would have said the same thing
thing.
for that matter. I would have said the same thing about Kirsty Noem. If Kirsty Noem had lost in 2018, which she almost did, it makes you skeptical considering her for any federal position.
It is kind of incredible to think that she almost lost in South Dakota. Like, that's
Well,
impressive.
that was always the bluer of the Dakotas, to be fair.
Okay, but that's a low bar.
It is an incredibly
That's a very low bar. Yeah, I think Matthew Torr made a good point. Alexei G. in Illinois. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. He lost a federal race in Illinois in 2010, and he's going to be nominated for a statewide office in Illinois.
Adam Laxalt.
To be fair, Laxalt lost in a bad year, and he wasn't blown out. There is that at least.
And he had won previously.
That is
He had won
fair.
previously. So he had at least previously won. It was a bad year, and he wasn't embarrassed. So
I would.
he wasn't the number one, and he wasn't the number one
It's
choice.
also not a
for me.
safe seat.
Yeah, he
Also
wasn't
not
the
a
number
safe
one
state.
choice. He wasn't the number one choice for Nevada Republicans. They really wanted, the former governor there. But yeah, it's not a safe state. Like, this would be the rough equivalent of like Roy Moore just coming back and Republicans be like, you know what? We want you to be our gubernatorial nominee. No.
So, speaking of candidates who should not be anywhere near office because they were so unpopular that they were going to lose, Bill de Blasio.
Hey.
Bill de Blasio. Yeah.
Bill de Blasio. He's out again.
Yeah, we're here today to remember Bill de Blasio, the worst mayor in the history of New York.
I don't know that I would agree to that, but definitely not as good as he could have been.
The poll, I mean, for context here as to how unpopular he was going into this race, there was a poll put out, I think, by the Working Families Party that had him, that had him at 3%, and 49% of voters said they would under no circumstance vote for Bill de Blasio in the primary. That is abysmal. That is awful.
Yeah, that is not ideal. That Working Families Party poll was really interesting.
Yeah, important thing. Noted groundhog murderer. This is he did murder a groundhog.
He did murder a groundhog. But anyway, folks,
he never faced justice. He never faced justice
Bill
for
de
that.
Blasio and his political career with one last play. If we shall remember tonight the long and sad political career of Bill de Blasio. All right, so Rip de Blasio.
Petition for November, when we have to play taps for a lot of people. The crying salute Doctor Who gif. The old man crying and saluting.
Yep,
we'll talk to the tech guys and we'll figure that out for you, Dylan.
So that Working Families Party poll, I believe, also had Elizabeth Holtzman in 4th place.
Yep.
Which again, very funny.
We're nearing the silly zone.
Very funny. Dan Goldman did a big oopsie today.
He did do a big oopsie. I saw that.
He did a big oopsie.
He committed a cardinal sin. He suggested there is a scenario in which abortion might not be a good thing to happen in a Democrat plus 50 seat.
No. Let's be entirely fair with what he said. He tacitly said he would go for a heartbeat bill, which that's pretty restrictive.
That's 6 weeks.
Yeah, not great. Not great if you're in a Democrat plus 50 district. We don't really even like that in swing districts. So big oopsie. He had to walk it back immediately, but damage is done, man. No, de Blasio wasn't a total loser. De Blasio had the unfortunate problem of being mayor of New York City. You don't get into higher office from there. It's why I'm not super sad that Eric Adams went there, because now he'll never go to higher office, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. A very good thing.
Yeah, Eric Adams should not be in higher office.
I do want to say, according to the Secretary of State website in Maryland, local early vote numbers have come in. So, soon, hopefully we will start to see early vote numbers from the actual important elections.
Hooray!
We're hoping.
I'm reading that some county level results might be available, but I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's from one of our.
I'm not seeing them for the big boy races. I am not seeing them for the big name races yet. Have not seen them. Local offices, I'm seeing them. I am not seeing them for the big name races yet. Oh, well, as I lie, the Attorney General's race does have, on the Democratic side, early voting numbers. Anthony Brown leads by just under 28,000 votes.
Out of how many?
Out of around 113,000.
I can't do math, so I can't.
7,500 plus 42,900.
Oh no, I mean percentages.
Oh, I'm not going to do that. Jesus.
I didn't know
There's
if they
two
had the
candidates.
percent.
Not going to do that.
113,000 votes, Eric. That is not a round number. I am not good at math. That's why I went to law school.
I don't know what my comment should be on that. I don't know. Okay. The Secretary of State website has numbers up for early voting for the governor's race. Ladies and gentlemen, this is from officially the Secretary of State website. Here we go. In the Republican side, Dan Cox leads the early in-person vote by around 4,000, 26.4K votes to Kelly Schultz's 22.2K votes. In the Democratic primary, Wes Moore leads second place Tom Perez by about 13,000.2 votes. Moore has about 43.9 thousand votes, and then Perez has 30.7K votes. So I don't know if you guys can see it.
I have the actual percentages on my website here.
Okay, but
Yeah,
there,
I'm
as you
pulling
can
them
see
Dan
here,
Cox, so Dan Cox is ahead of Kelly Schultz by about 9% of the vote. In the Democratic primary, Wes Moore 38%, Tom Perez 27%, Peter Franco 21%. Nobody else is
That's not a good number for Franco.
No, that's not a good number for Franco.
That's a lower number than I was expecting. Even.
me too.
That's about what he was polling at. The problem is everyone else is polling lower than him.
Well,
So that's governor, lieutenant governor. Let's look at attorney general. Anthony Brown ahead 62 to 38% with those votes in. Let's look at the representative in Congress votes. In the 6th district on the Republican side, the one that we're really looking at closely, Matthew.
It's not even close. Oh boy.
Neil Parrott up 65 to 14. That's interesting.
How do I navigate this website, Eric?
I am just looking at the website here. So that'd be really bad
okay, there we go.
Yeah, that'd be really bad for Parrott.
For Foldy.
Oh yeah, and the Attorney General. It's worth noting here. Right now, an avowed white nationalist, Michael Paratoka, who is a Constitution Party candidate, is leading the Attorney General side. This is pretty common, though. I think he's been a nominee state time. Let me look at the exact Constitution Party, but I believe he was their nominee in 2004. Basically, he's affiliated with the League of the South, which is not good. That is very, very bad.
Yeah, not great. Also, results in for the 4th district. Glenn Ivey up 56 to 33 over Donna Edwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Michael Pertoka was in the Anne Arundel County. He previously served on their county commission, split with the Constitution Party. He had been affiliated with the League of the South, according to some other stuff. He's debated the characterization as a white nationalist, but he has pretty clear affiliations with a bunch of Southern separatist groups, which is really weird because he's
not fun.
Maryland.
So, question, because I forget the county breakdowns. In the 6th, it looks like Ivey is getting all of it, or not Ivey, I'm sorry. Parrott is getting all his points from Washington County and Frederick County. That's where he's getting like all his votes from. I don't know what the county breakdowns are, but is that significant?
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah. Well, F for the Foldy campaign.
Yep.
F in the chat. Put your F's in the chat.
Big F in the chat. Yep.
Are we gonna have to play taps for Foldy?
We might have to play just because of how much attention this campaign got. We might have to.
Yeah, these results are interesting. Wouldn't have expected that. That's really strange.
me thinking somebody's going to win in a blowout is generally the kiss of death. They lose. They just do. Sorry, Matthew Foldy.
Yeah.
I killed your campaign.
Keep in mind, these are early votes. Like I said earlier, candidates with endorsements can, in fact, lose bigly. But yeah, was there any polling in Maryland 6? That's the confusing bit.
No, there was no polling in these races.
Yep, so we're all going blind. That would be a fairly major problem.
I don't understand why campaigns don't all do polling. Like, I mean, I'm sure they do, but just release that, honestly.
We were there are I don't know, I believe this is early votes, but it looks like we're starting to get some semblance potentially of election day vote. Decision Desk is not showing it yet, but I'm seeing some other sites start to report it. It does look like this is early vote from Washington County is being reported by the big name sites.
Yeah, so more on Perutka, the Attorney General potential nominee. Again, he's affiliated with the Neo-Confederate League of the South. He said he's angry that Maryland was blocked from seceding during the Civil War. Has said public education is a communist plot, that laws protecting gay marriage and abortion are illegal and unenforceable because they violate God's law. I wonder if he had the same view of slavery, for example. That seems to violate God's law.
And
he also said the concept of
the same
separation
view of slavery.
And
He's
he
in the
said
League of the South.
Yeah, and he said the concept of separation of church and state is a great lie. So, not a great nomination for Republicans there potentially.
In fairness to him, so did Lauren Boebert. So,
like I said, to be fair to Lauren Boebert, she is not a member of League of the South, as far as I know.
I don't know if that's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, she might not be. Would you rule it out?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not on camera, at least. The Perutka guy. This seems bad news.
Yeah,
this seems like bad optics, as my buddy Mark would call it. This seems like bad optics.
Yeah,
I mean, safety's safe, but still bad optics.
I mean, usually Democrats are the ones with bad optics.
Part of the problem with, I mean, again, you look at Oregon. Republicans just basically gave up on the Senate race there, which usually happens in these states. They did it by nominating Joanne Perkins, who was a QAnon supporter. She also lost in 2020. It is, when you don't have a lot of members in your party, it can be somewhat hard to police nominations because it's difficult to get people to run for office who are credible, and it's even more difficult to get people who could appeal to a lot of voters.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Just a philosophical, strategic question. Would it not be better to not nominate anybody than to nominate white nationalists from the League of the South in a safe blue state? I feel like it would just be better to nominate nobody.
If they had that choice, I'm pretty sure the Maryland Republican Party would take the no nominating of that person choice, but that's not an option, unfortunately.
No, I'm not. No, we're not going to contest this race.
Yeah, it's worth noting. He's only up by 13. This is the early vote. The problem is the election day vote can often tend to be far more conservative than the early vote. So that's not good.
Yeah, I was going to say. Cody Leach in the chat says Peter Franco will do better on election day. He's winning Washington County. That would defy what we generally see in early vote versus election day votes in Democratic primaries. I'm not going to rule it out, but that would defy the usual pattern.
Man, where Foldy is getting Oh boy. Poor Foldy. I don't know about poor Foldy, but
Foldy's getting folded.
Yeah, Foldy's getting folded. That's very true.
Yeah, not a good performance from him. You would expect someone with all those endorsements to be doing a little bit better than 14% of the vote.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
would.
that's not good. That's not good.
No, I mean, that is far lower than I expected.
Oh, okay. Let me see here if. Oh, okay. It did drop in here. Okay. Looks like, yeah, we got the early vote in from on the Season Desk HQ. It is showing the same numbers that we have currently.
All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and share our screen, and so we can. Or I'm going to go ahead and share.
Let me share my screen here. I want to show the Republican primary, if you please. Here.
Yeah, it looks like Schultz is doing really well around Annapolis. Is doing better around Annapolis.
The correct seat? Yes, it is. So, yeah, this is the thing is, I believe this is all early vote, but interesting. This is the early vote again. But again, interestingly enough, here, it's like no one's really blowing anyone out. Like Cox is getting some really big margins, some of the really, really deep red counties, but you can see around the more competitive areas here. For the most part, it's relatively close. So we'll see how much that continues with
election day.
With election night. We'll see how much that continues.
Also, and, we don't have those early. We won't have the mail-in votes for quite a while here. Yeah. Namely, not tonight. We won't be getting those tonight.
No, and not a race that was being followed super closely, but still one I think is worth talking about. Steny Hoyer's primary. People thought this was going to be really competitive at the start of the cycle. Michaela Wilkes, I believe was her name, who had run in 2020, was running again. Typically, candidates do better on their second run. Keena Collins and Corey Bush both did far better in their second runs. Hoyer's district got less white, so Hoyer seemed to be in a little bit of trouble. Wilkes raised basically no money, had to forego the few TV ads that she did run last cycle, and is currently losing 73-17. Now she lost, I believe, 64-27 last time. But still, for a second run, you want to see your vote total tick up. Yes, she had far less money, but you still want to see that tick up a little bit, even with fewer resources. You have higher name recognition. So yeah, I do think Hoyer has some vulnerability, but this isn't a great showcase for that theory.
And this is what fascinated me with the 6th district here. I really wanted to see if the small sect that is conservative fame on Twitter would translate it all to a primary. It has very clearly not. We have seen it work for Democrats before. This has been a ginormous, objectively a ginormous failure here.
Have we seen it work for Democrats before?
It's like at least better than 14% of the early vote. I mean, to be fair, there, I would say.
No, genuinely though, like I can't think of an example where a really famous online Democrat translated their online fame into a congressional seat. I can't think of an example.
I guess that's fair. Yeah, we're getting results in slowly but surely here. We're starting to get them. It's good. I like it.
They could count a little faster, though.
They could count a little faster, though. That would be nice. I agree. Did you know that Andy Harris was the only Maryland congressperson, individual congressman to congressman. There are no congresswomen in Maryland. Congressman did not have a primary tonight of the incumbents.
Huh. That's interesting.
Everyone else has a primary except for Andy Harris. I mean, nominal primaries, all of them, but everyone else does.
What is it with Andy Harris and being so popular despite being, sorry, my inner partisan is going to show, an absolute lunatic?
But I mean, he represents a Republican seat. He represents a Republican seat. He seems to care about constituent issues quite a bit. He's very anti-DC, which is fairly big. And they don't really like DC out on the Eastern Shore too much. And the stuff that he's crazy on, I don't think they care too much about. It's probably the rough equivalent of looking at someone like someone running in a Biden plus 20 seat Republicans, like, oh, that person is nuts. Why are they getting all these votes? Well, they agree with him on things they like, and then a bunch of the stuff that they're nutty on, they don't really care about. Like,
gotcha. Jonathan Reutenberg, is Glenn Ivey the progressive candidate? No, Glenn Ivey was heavily backed by AIPAC, Democratic Majority for Israel. Glenn Ivey, I don't know how progressive Glenn Ivey is on issues outside of Israel-Palestine. I don't even know how progressive he is on that issue. My guess is not very if AIPAC is supporting him because, well, Donna Edwards is not Ilhan Omar and got all of AIPAC's ire for reasons that are mildly elusive to me. And Cody Leach asks if I've ever been on the Eastern Shore. No, I've never even been to Maryland, besides just passing through. So there's that.
It's a different political world there than the rest of Maryland.
That's for sure.
Although
same with Western Maryland, those 3 counties.
Although I live in New Jersey, and New Jersey is a very weird state in its own right. So
that is also true. Still waiting for continued results here, folks. We continue to wait for Election Day vote to report in here for us. Hopefully, we're going to continue to see some of those numbers in here soon. But as we report right now, at least according to Decision Desk HQ, Wes Moore with the early vote leads over closest man Tom Perez by about 11.5 points, which adds up to about 13.3 thousand votes, 13,300 votes. Dan Cox leads Kelly Schultz by about 8.5%, which adds up to about 4,400 votes. And then Neil Parrott absolutely destroying Matt Ufolde in the 6th District GOP primary, and then Glenn Ivey having a 23-point advantage, over Donna Edwards by about a 4,100 vote total right there, folks.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're still waiting. We'll see if we can continue to get good results here. Anything to think about it so far tonight, guys? I want to hear you guys talk more.
I guess the big question of the night, is Twitter real life? The answer appears to be no.
Well, since both of you said no, I guess I'll say yes to make it interesting.
Terrible.
Twitter is at least an extension of real life. There are real people on Twitter, and they interact with other real people. Sometimes they interact with fake people. Usually they interact with real people. So, yes, Twitter is functionally real life.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
Yep, not the greatest performance of all time if we're thinking of it.
No, Foldy's performance is not good.
And it's weird because it
generally.
seemed like a very on the surface, at least, it seemed like a very disciplined campaign. It had credible endorsements, had a lot of
You do not.
But clearly, that's not enough.
You don't get Larry Hogan, Donald Trump Jr., and Kevin McCarthy unless you've got something. I don't know what that something is, considering he's only at 14%.
Mommy and daddy connections. That's what I think it ended up being.
Must have been. Man, those are some good connections. There is now if Foldy loses by this margin, I think you have found the most credible Connor Lamb alternative for most overhyped campaign of the cycle.
Now the question is when we just get more votes coming in.
Man, I could have made good money on Predict It.
Yeah, I was going to say, there probably was some money to be made on Predict It.
The only time I ever made money on I made money twice on Predict It. Kentucky Senate primary in 2020 and the redo election for North Carolina's 9th. Those are the only times
he was trading at 59 cents an hour ago. F
indeed. I don't know if he is like Brad Ashford. Brad Ashford at least had the benefit of
he had the dignity
being an
of being
incumbent.
a congressman at one point.
Yeah, he was the incumbent. Not a very good one, considering he lost to Kari Eastman once, and then his wife lost to Kari Eastman. So not great, but he was at least a former incumbent. Matthew Foldy's just some dude from Twitter.
But that's the funny thing, though. It's like Trone donated a lot of money to himself during this. I mean, like he donated about like $10 million to himself for the loaned money.
Okay, but that's a drop in the bucket for Trone.
That is, but it's still a lot of money. He must have thought he saw something there. I mean, granted, Parrott can still make this competitive. Like we said, Parrott's not a bad candidate by any means. But just we didn't think he'd be the nominee. Or we thought that this would be certainly closer than what we're looking at right here.
So we have more votes in, apparently.
Ooh.
In the gubernatorial race. On the Democratic side, I don't know what website this is because it's a Twitter screenshot, and Twitter is always reliable, as you know. But Westmore is at 36.3%, Tom Perez at 29.1%, Peter Franco at 19.9%.
Yeah, I don't see that updated on the. What percentage of the vote does it say is in? Like, how many votes does Westmore have in this?
Westmore has 53,000 votes.
Okay, so that's more than what DDHQ has.
Tom Perez has 43,000. Franco has 29,000. AP as 20.6% of votes counted.
Mm-hmm.
According to
so I'm just going to go ahead and show the current what DDHQ has, though, because I think this is interesting. This is an interesting pattern for the gubernatorial race here. Let me just making sure I have the right one up here.
I want to see if this is updated on the. That total might not be accurate because it's not updated on the Board of Elections website either.
Yeah. So this is what the race is currently looking like right now. Notice something here. Franco is doing really well in like the rural or more Republican parts of the seat, probably because he's the more conservative of the candidates. Tom Perez is doing really well in Frederick, and he's doing well in Montgomery. Westmore is doing well everywhere else, which is the center of the state, as well as a couple of those counties, more competitive Talbot and Dorchester counties right here.
Also, I'm being told we're being told in the chat it's pronounced Francho. Thank you.
Francho. Yeah.
There is an interesting reporting error happening right now on potentially a couple of sites here as I look at it. That they are copying the Baltimore City and Baltimore County numbers on each other. If you will look at it, you highlight the two, at least on the Republican side. It is pretty clear that those numbers are they are not going to be the same like that, I would say.
Which numbers are those?
Baltimore County and Baltimore City proper are currently having the same numbers, and I would doubt that's right.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
So, just a heads up, it looks like most websites. Yeah, and there we go, as that drops out from Baltimore City there on the Times.
But yeah, any thoughts on the governor's side so far? Like when we were going into this, we were mentioning, Perez and Moore, Franco, obviously,
yeah,
Francho. What is Moore's background? What makes him kind of? Obviously, there's no real progressive in this race. Is Moore the most liberal of the candidates in the field, or would that be Perez?
Moore is the unknown quantity, from what I understand. I don't believe he's. Let me double check so I'm not talking out my ass, but I don't think Wes Moore has held prior office.
No, he has not. He has been floated for office before, but he has never actually run. He was the former CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation. It's a big charity foundation based out of New York.
Every time
that helps every child with welfare to buy school supplies is a big deal. That was a big thing that had happened. It fights poverty efforts in and across New York.
Every time I hear that, literally every time I think the Robin Hood financial platform.
He's also an author. Over the other Wes Moore. It's very interesting. It's an interesting book.
Yeah. In 2006, just looking at his Wikipedia, Moore self-identified as a fiscal conservative and social moderate, but kind of seems to, according to his issue page at least, seems to have rebranded as semi-progressive.
Well, it kind of depends. Some of those issues, they're like a really Baltimore specific, like focusing on gun violence prevention in Baltimore, the opposition to canceling the red line. That's a big, big deal for Baltimore lawmakers. Hogan canceled that and redirected the funds towards the suburbs, which is a very politically good decision for him. But a lot of Baltimore lawmakers to this day are extremely angry about that because they saw the red line as something very, very important.
Sure, but like he wants to accelerate the increasing of the minimum wage, increase eviction protections, things you wouldn't necessarily strengthen collective bargaining, things you wouldn't necessarily expect from a fiscal conservative. But obviously a lot of this is just branding. He could easily go back on all this once he gets.
We really don't know. I mean, the only real thing we know is that Franco is very closely allied with Hogan statewide. If you want something as close as you get to a Hogan third term, aside from Kelly Schultz, Franco would be your best bet. But obviously, this is a Democratic primary. There's Democratic voters, and Franco is very popular in his office, but we've seen before, for example, in North Carolina, Elaine Marshall, very, very, very popular, has won statewide a lot of times. She ran statewide as a Democrat for Senate in 2010 and got demolished by Richard Burr, 11 points. sometimes being a popular low-level statewide officer does not translate very well into being a credible larger statewide candidate.
Also, 2010 was a bad year for Democrats in general. So, I mean, an 11-point loss is bad, obviously, but it was 2010.
He's got a good point there.
It's not like Elaine Marshall lost by 11 points in 2016.
Oh. Oh.
That would have been bad.
That would have admittedly been bad.
So I'm at least looking at this. There may have been some sort of reporting error from New York Times, at least. They have apparently done early voting totals wrong.
Yes.
For Baltimore County, Baltimore City.
Yes.
We talked about that, yes. Man.
Slow night.
Who has questions in the chat? Who has questions?
Yeah, let's bring some questions here.
Yeah, please. Help us.
Dear Lord, Maryland, you count your ballots at a slow pace.
Yeah, this is kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
For Maryland, yeah. I mean, again, you could just count your votes ahead of time. I don't know why people are just not used to doing this. It seems like something I would personally, if I was running a state, I would do that early, but
so Eric,
what do I know? I'm just an election analyst.
Can you play the devil's advocate and tell me why they wouldn't count their ballots ahead of time? What conceivable
I can't think of a good
is
reason
there?
I can't think of a good reason. The only reason I potentially heard is that some people are concerned that counting them early could tip off a campaign, which I've never heard of happening. I've never heard a really good reason not to count the votes early.
Somebody asked if Al Gross is still running in the general election. I believe he dropped out. Did he not?
Yes, he dropped out, but he was not removed from the ballot because it's too close to the election day in the special.
Sorry, go ahead.
So he's still on the ballot, but he's not actively running or anything.
Oh, did he drop out of the general election or just the special? I don't know. Was he even running in the general?
Who's this?
Al Gross.
Yeah, Gross was running for both. He was running for both. He can get off the ballot for the general because it's further out, but the special is closer, and they don't have to remove him for an election that's that close. So he's still on the ballot for the special, but he's not actively running. I'm pretty sure he's telling people to vote for someone else.
Yeah. What are our Missouri Senate predictions?
I got Schmidt. I would put a bunch of money on Eric Schmidt.
I would take that bet and unfortunately go Gretton's.
I think the abortion thing has actually helped Schmidt. In a weird way, him being the attorney general allows him to posturize on these things a lot.
But I
think that's going to help him.
But has he done any posturing on this?
Yes, already. He was like big supporting of like doing the no abortions for no reasons thing now. in like Missouri, he held like multiple press conferences on it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Various polls show Mary, not going to try to pronounce her last name, from Alaska having a lead against Palin. What do we think? She's a Democrat in Alaska.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Even if she leads Palin, the top 4 is going to catch her in the end.
Like, again, here's the problem, is that she is a Democrat in Alaska in a Republican year.
And
not happening. Not happening.
You can no longer win with a plurality of the vote. You have to win with a majority.
And Democrats have not gotten a majority of the vote statewide in Alaska in decades. It has been a very long time. They have only had candidates win or affiliated with them win that have met that have been independents or under 50%. None of them have gotten over 50%. They rely on other parties taking votes. The system removed it from them.
I unironically think the only Democratic aligned candidate who had a prayer of winning was Santa Claus. Genuinely. I am only like 20% kidding. Like, I could see a bunch of independents going for Santa Claus for the meme, not thinking he's going to win, and then he wins.
That's fair. That sounds like the Alaska's kind of a nonsense state. I could see that sort of nonsense happening in
Alaska is definitely this is a state where Republicans do better in urban areas than they do in the rural areas. This is a state where the major divide is over how much government services can be provided. This is a state where the Democrats have traditionally been more open to taking money from the permanent fund, which is basically socialism, and Republicans strongly want to defend it because it gives money to people. Like, it's a weird state. It's a bizarro state. It's a very bizarro state. It's a state where voters continuously elect Republicans to the legislature, remove Republicans that caucus with Democrats, and these people still insist on caucusing with Democrats. It's kind of baffling, to be honest.
It is a very silly state.
I've read about this before. It's like the top 4 system is basically the Alaskan attempt at getting a system where you can never remove Democratic caucusing Republicans from office, because the idea is that all the Democrats will vote for the Republican, and then like maybe a fourth of Republicans will vote for the moderate Republican, and that'll keep them. This is, of course, silly because as it's pretty much been shown that if you don't have a member of your party on the ballot, there's a substantial drop-off, even if it's for a candidate that's endorsed by the party. The margin of victory for Democrats in the Steve Poizner race in California in 2018 was smaller than the number of undervotes. This is a race where the Republicans were all behind Steve Poizner. It was a former Republican elected official statewide, undoubtedly endorsed by Republicans. He's basically a Republican in all but name, and he still had a ton of undervotes. Like, it just happens. It's really hard to convince voters to say, well, look, we know there's someone we know you don't have the party you like on the ballot. But you can pick between this guy and this other guy who are a little bit more moderate. Like, that's not great for most voters. They just kind of want to vote for the party that they like, and they don't want to vote for the party they don't like. That's why I ran against top 4. I really hate it.
See, I like ranked choice voting. I don't know how I feel about the top 4 system.
It's awful. It's dreadful. It is a dreadful system, especially like Alaska. If you think Maryland takes a long time to count votes, ooh.
But, my ideal system would be approval voting.
I love approval. Approval voting is perfect. It literally gets rid of all, like, the people that love ranked choice hate approval voting for some reason, and I don't get it, because approval voting is just ranked choice, but it makes sense.
Cut out all the steps. You cut out the extra steps.
You cut out all the wonky steps that people are like, oh, well, this will encourage people to vote for moderates or vote for the party they don't like. No, just do approval voting. That means if there's if you have a Republican primary, just vote for all the candidates you like and don't vote for the ones you don't like, and the candidate the most people vote for wins. It's simple. It's brain dead easy. We do this all the time in county council races where you can vote for multiple candidates. Most voters have experience with voting for multiple candidates at the same time. It's not uncommon.
See, the reason I want approval voting is so that I can disapprove all of the people who run for president on the Democratic side in 2024 because they're all gonna suck.
At least
Oh,
he's
you're not
honest.
excited. You're not excited about Bernie 2024.
No, I love Bernie. I love you. Don't do it. You're too old.
It'll be a
Don't
literal
do it.
weekend. It'll be a literal weekend at Bernie's. It's gonna be
Okay, Bernie, if you run in 24, your campaign slogan needs to be "Weekend at Bernie's." If it's not, you have failed. Don't run in 24, though, please. I love you. You're too old.
What about the potential, some gadfly, like, maybe Cori Bush decides she wants to be president, or Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Presley, maybe.
Maybe it's because I'm a progressive Democrat who doesn't see any hope of getting a real leftist in the presidency. But I have very much come to the position of it's better to elect leftists to Congress than try to push them for president. They can affect more change as a congressional bloc than they can as a president with a Senate that would never go along with them. See the Joe Biden presidency.
Fair enough. I do think this is an interesting question, though, since we have a bit of free time here. This is from Aaron Hutton. So Augusta, Georgia. Watching Brian Kemp go from public enemy #1 to basically unbeatable is wild to me. On a scale from 1 to 10, how good a campaign has he run, or is it more a product of luck? He's run an 11 in terms of good campaigns. I really don't know if he could find an issue with his campaign. He straddled the Trump line without causing an issue. He's aggressively done what Republicans like without going too far. He's avoided some really key social issue warrior stuff that could be potential problems. He's beloved by the Atlanta Republican establishment. Like, he's run a really good campaign. And on top of it, you have Stacey Abrams, who is just not as good a candidate as people thought she was.
Look, I know there's a love on the Democratic side for Stacey Abrams as a candidate. I don't see it, and I don't think I ever have seen it. I don't think she's a bad candidate. I think she's fine. She's not below replacement level. Neither is she above replacement level.
Yeah, I think on the one hand, I get why Democrats really like Stacey Abrams. She's falls into that camp of being a very liberal politician that's aggressively within the Democratic mainstream and falls well into that narrative Democrats love, which is the coalition of the ascendant, right? You have this, she's a black woman from Georgia. She's going to become the next governor of Georgia and lead Georgia into the promised land of the progressive future. That's a great vision. That's how you get people like Gretchen Wilson to buy prayer candles of you. The problem with that is she has to run in Georgia as it is right now, not the way Georgia wants to be run in 10, 20 years. And she has an unfortunate tendency to commit gaffes. This was not really a huge thing in 2018 when it was a Democratic wave. I can't tell you a single thing Stacey Abrams has done in the last month. The last notable thing she did was get in a controversy publicly for basically saying Georgia was the worst state in the country to live in. And before that, it was being photographed maskless in a school full of masked kids. Like, that's not how you launch a campaign. I get why people like the voter registration stuff, but I don't know.
She did better. She did well with the voter registration stuff. I respect that. I think that was
a lot
good.
of it though was automatic. A lot of it was automatic.
A lot of it was automatic. But calling your state the worst state to live in while you're running to be governor of the state is an odd choice.
Well, that's the funny thing. That's really funny. I don't recall Roy Cooper ever doing that. Roy Cooper there's a lot of disagreements with the legislature,
like
on a lot of issues. But I don't think he's ever said North Carolina is a bad state to live in, let alone the worst. He's like, oh, we want to make North Carolina better. Like, that's the obvious message.
See, I feel like not competent. That might be too strong a word. A better Democratic Party would have looked at Stacey Abrams and Beto's campaigns in 2018 and specifically Stacey Abrams' work afterwards, and said, hey, you guys might be good DNC leaders instead of Jamie Harrison, who raised a lot of money and nationalized state races in ways that went very poorly for state Democrats.
Who's pretty much single-handedly responsible for the removal of the last white Democrats from the South Carolina legislature. Like aside from Dick Harpootlian, who was a notorious racist in his own right, like getting rid of people that were actually like unimpeachable moderate moderate Democrats in white Trump heavy areas. That takes skill.
Your disagreements with them aside, I have many disagreements with them. I am not a moderate. Not great to nationalize state races, especially when it's not in your favor. Yes, nationalizing state races in, say, D+50 districts, that's good. That's what you want to do if you're a state party. Nationalizing state races in R+50 districts, not what you want to do. Very bad.
Georgia's still a competitive state. I think a lot of Democrats get caught up with this idea that if you win a state once, that's like it. That's it forever. Joe Biden won the state in 2020. 2 Democrats won Senate races. Well, that's it. Georgia's a blue state now. That's how it works. But North Carolina voted for a Democrat in 2008. It voted for Democratic senator, Democratic supermajorities in the legislature. Since then, Democrats have won 0 federal races here and have won 0 state legislative cycles and have had a very tough time winning congressional races. And it goes beyond gerrymandering. Georgia is still a competitive state. And someone like Kemp, I think Abrams is very popular with like this progressive adjacent DC set, this Obama sort of set, which is like, we want these young, vibrant faces for the party. They've lasered in on Stacey Abrams as the face. She must be the face.
I don't like that the Resist Twitter has become the progressive Democratic movement. I don't like it. This is not what I as a progressive have signed up for.
I mean, by progressive, I don't think actual progressives are like hugely in love with Stacey Abrams to the extent the establishment is. They love Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams is the establishment's favorite.
There is a reason that there's not a single federal Democrat you can think of that said Stacey Abrams didn't win the 2018 race or that said that it was a legitimate contest that Brian Kemp won. They love Stacey Abrams. They will take what she says at face value. They want her to be the governor. And I don't think anything is going to make that not the case. But if she does lose again, and the polls, pretty much every poll shows her down big, 5 to 6 points, which, again, we still have this leans Republican. But 5 to 6 is a pretty good performance for Republicans in Georgia at this point. They put so much investment in the state.
I mean, just considering the polarization of Georgia in recent elections, 5 to 6 points is just it's a good margin.
Progressives, Stacey Abrams isn't even progressives' favorite politician out of Georgia. Probably not even. No, progressives' favorite is probably Warnock. Warnock, Ossoff. I think progressives like Warnock and Ossoff more than they like Abrams. Lucy McBeth. I like Lucy McBeth. I don't like that Lucy McBeth endorsed Michael Bloomberg. I get why she did. But that's not great. Somebody asked,
though, is that Democrats have invested so much money and time into Stacey Abrams as an individual. I'm sure there are people they'll find for 2028 if Kemp wins again. But who is it going to be at this point? It's going to be like McBath. Is they put so much into Abrams as a person that I think they need to find that they might have a challenge finding someone else who fits the mold of what they want so close.
If Warnock loses the Senate race, I think Warnock could be a credible gubernatorial nominee. Aaron asks in the chat if I think Fetterman is the perfect example of a bridge candidate. Well, he unites all factions of the Democratic Party except the K-Hive, who is still very upset that Fetterman beat Connor Lamb. And they're now supporting the rich dude running for Wisconsin Senate over Mandela Barnes, which I think is interesting.
Stay UK Hive.
Stay UK Hive. I don't know if Fetterman has the right idea. I think Fetterman's running a very good campaign right now. I don't know if he's going to be. I don't know that he's the perfect candidate in the sense that he's going to win all the Democrats and a substantial portion of the independents. But I think he's a good example of vibe politics. And as much as Eric and Joe and I will joke about Big Dude, there is something to genuinely be said for vibe politics.
There, absolutely.
And I think Fetterman embodies how Democrats can do vibe politics almost perfectly. Whether that translates to a win or not, this is 2022. This is a Republican year. I don't see it, but he's got the right idea, I think.
I will say, even without the mail-in ballots, it's looking pretty good for Wes Moore right now. Wes Moore is probably pretty happy with how it's looking for him.
Do we have more results in?
Yes, for sure. If you look on the website.
All right, let's go over those results. Then while we're still on the DDH. Yep, here we go. The DDHQ site.
Might need to consult with you guys, but I don't have a DDHQ.
It's okay. Just
thing.
Eric, if you could run off the results, please.
Thank you.
Gubernatorial race, DDHQ, 26% of the vote in. Wes Moore ahead, 28-26 over Perez. Franco, 21%. Franco. Senate race, a no-name person is getting 20% of the vote against Chris Van Hollen for some reason. Dan Cox is now 14 points over Kelly Schultz. It's not a good sign if you're Kelly Schultz.
Yeah, that's the type of margin that gives Dan Cox the nomination without mail-in ballots.
Mm-hmm. District 6 again, additional votes in. Neil Parrott again up 67, I think. Sorry, let me pull
Wait,
this.
that's District 2.
Yeah, 67-14 over Matthew.
That's rough.
And then Anthony Brown is still inexplicably getting 62% of the vote in the Attorney General primary.
That is okay, but he's winning by 24, 25 points. That's not as much as I would have expected.
Well, again, he's Anthony Brown.
Fair enough. Okay, somebody needs to explain where this... wait, no, I asked that question last time already. I don't understand the J.B. Pritzker thing. I don't. I never will.
It's online teenagers. Don't give it a...
He's big dude, but less charismatic.
And richer.
And more corrupt.
Okay, but... yeah, he's an Illinois politician. More corrupt.
Here we go. J.B. Pritzker, John Fetterman versus Jim Justice, Mark Robinson, big dude election. That would be amusing to watch. That would certainly be something to watch.
Jim Justice is a nominee.
No, but if it's a big deal on the Republican side, it would be like Jim Justice, Luther Strange. That'd probably be what you'd have to, because Luther Strange is the original big dude, Big Luther.
How big is Luther Strange?
He's like 6'7".
Okay, I'm like 5 foot, so people who are like 5'10" look huge to me. 6'7", you might as well be a mountain.
Actually, he's 6'9". He's the tallest U.S. senator in history.
There's a joke there, and it's very, very nice. Peter Franco is really finkenauering this primary. Thank you, Jonathan Reutenberg. That's good.
Yeah. Do we need to do taps for Peter for him or?
Yes. Well, let's do it for Foley first, if we would please. this race has not been called yet by DDHQ, but let's be very honest here, folks. We know where this is going here with Matthew Foldy. And considering the fact, according to DDHQ, he is currently down, as I check here, by 53.5 points about currently. So let me get myself prepared here. We say goodbye to another sort of online campaign. Like I said, I was interested to see how this was going to go from a interest standpoint, but obviously we have learned the lesson tonight. The conservative influencer on Twitter does not translate to electoral politics. Who could have guessed that? But anyway, please take a moment of silence as we play taps for the online campaign of Matthew Foldy. All right, so Rip Foldy.
So, a question. Now that the Foldy campaign seems to have folded, is this? I think. Do you think we can look back at this campaign and say, okay, no matter how credible they seem, if they started their campaign on Twitter, they are not going to win?
That sounds about right to me. What a failure.
Yeah.
And I do. This is a good point here by Philip Meyer in the chat here. Parrott did win the Washington Post endorsement after he said pretty unequivocally that yes, that Joe Biden won the election. Foldy, and apparently his interview with the Washington Post was like, well, he won Maryland. I know that for sure. And refused to say anything about Arizona or Pennsylvania. So, yeah, what you going to do there? That's actually a good thing. Obviously, I was kind of disappointed in Foldy when I heard about that actually. And I was, kind of started to turn on a little bit there. I think Neil Parrott will be a good candidate. We're going to keep this race that leans Democratic. Parrott's a guy who actually knows how to campaign, so we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Foldy, for the sake of his own career as an influencer in the conservative area, did have to play footsie with election denialists, because for some reason that is something that conservative Twitter is really in on. So he kind of had to for career preservation. Not great.
Yep, it's somewhat unfortunate, I would say.
Somewhat.
At least somewhat. Anyway, folks, we're going to only go for about another 20 minutes here as results continue to come in incredibly slowly here in Maryland tonight. We're seeing less and less of a point of continuing to. This is the thing with doing just one state, folks. Sometimes it's just how it goes.
Yeah. As Boris Johnson says, them's the breaks.
Oh, Dylan going there fast.
I'm sorry. It's so funny. I can't not use it.
Just going in there hard. He just stabbing us all. So much stabbing.
Hey, the progressive candidate lost tonight, too. Not that I had any hope for Donna Edwards, but she lost. So I have something to be disappointed in, too.
Well, to be fair, this was kind of expected. She has been having issues getting elected for a while since she left Congress.
I actually did learn that Glenn Ivey also ran a failed campaign before this. So, all right, Democrats, keep nominating people who have lost other elections. Thanks.
We
And don't worry, before we go, we will play taps for Peter Francho because he's not winning this.
he's not.
It would take a miracle for him to win at this point.
Pretty big miracle. Man. The death of the Maryland Republican Party right before our very eyes.
Nah, there was a Maryland Republican Party?
No, there was Larry Hogan.
Nah.
Man. I feel bad for Parrott and Barry Glassman, who was unopposed for the comptroller race. I feel bad that they're going to have to run likely with Dan Cox and
And a white
Peruka
nationalist, yeah.
and the white nationalist. That seems rough. That seems pretty bad. I don't know about you, Eric. That seems like
the
bad
Democrats
news
do
for
share culpability in Cox. They have been supporting his campaign with money.
Okay, but
the problem
okay.
is, they can't. He's not going to win. So it's less egregious here than like in Pennsylvania, where that's clearly becoming a very, very bad decision in hindsight to have invested into this. There's no risk in doing this in Maryland. Dan Cox isn't going to win.
So let me play devil's advocate for Pennsylvania because I've seen this going around, and he was in. Doug Mastriano was endorsed by Trump.
3 days. Those ads started a month before the primary day.
Doug Mastriano was winning.
That Trump endorsement came 3 days because he was terrified that Oz was going to lose. That came 3 days before the election day. That shit had zero difference. Difference. Maybe like 5% of undecided voters. Zero difference. Those ads from Shapiro started running a month before election day. That shit was happening when I was still back in Virginia. This is not just a Trump thing.
No, it's
Trump,
not just
Trump did not want to endorse if he wanted to endorse Mastriano, he would have endorsed him like way before a Saturday morning, the weekend before the election. That's
Okay,
what
He endorsed him because it was an easy win. That's why he endorsed him.
But Joe, and you would know this better than I would, but was there ever a time where Mastriano was not winning in the polls?
He was. They were 35% undecideds before Democrats started pulling in that money. They were tied. He was basically tied with Barletta, maybe up by like a point or two. This was not a thing until the ad started running. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But there's a correlation, though, that tracks with Mastriano starting to do better in the last month of the primary, starting to pull away, and those ads coming up. The man did not have money. He did not have money. Especially compared to McSwain or even Barletta. He did, or hell, Dave White. Dave White and McSwain had millions of dollars. He did not have money.
Doug Mastriano had a lane. Bill McSwain, Lou Barletta, White, they were all running in the same lane. They were all taking the same votes. Doug Mastriano won with what, 45% of the vote?
44%.
44%. That's only a little bit high. Yes, the Trump endorsement came 3 days before. But if you compare his performance to the rest of the gubernatorial nominees that Trump has endorsed to have won, that's not that much higher. It's barely higher. And he was running against 6 different candidates all in the same lane. I mean, I'm not nearly as convinced that those ads had a huge effect as everyone else's. Maybe they did.
For me, it's not whether the ads had an impact or not. So they spent money on someone who's literally running on not just election denial, literally deregistering all voters in the state of Pennsylvania. Democrats looked at this. They calculated the risk here. They looked at it. We're like, we don't think we're concerned Josh Shapiro could lose this election because the climate is so bad. We think he has a better chance of winning if it's Mastriano, and that chance outweighs the problem that will come if Mastriano wins the election. I think ultimately Democrats had egg on their face because the fact that they put money into this, they did this angered a lot of Republicans. I mean, that it comes off as really bad. It'd be like if Republicans were like, hey, you know, we don't want this crazy socialist to win the swing state. We're going to spend all this money in the campaign telling everyone that they support Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, and then getting mad if they win the election. Like, you can't do that. If you truly think someone is a threat to democracy, you don't spend money on them.
Now, I am not saying it was a good strategy. I remember the 2016 campaign. I remember the Pied Piper strategy Hillary had, literally saying, hey, let's elevate Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and I think the candidate who came in third place, let's elevate all of them. Yeah, not a great strategy. I just don't think it had that much of an impact. I wouldn't have done it if I were in charge. But
for me, it's less the impact than it is the fact that they did it to begin with. That just screams to me that a flagrant disregard for democracy. They looked at that and were like, the odds are. They made that declaration, they made that decision, and I think it's really bad. I think it reflects very poorly on their leadership.
All the value judgments you're making, I completely agree with. I think they're fair. I just don't think it had as much of an impact.
Like, it's one thing to endorse Todd Akin because you think he's more conservative, and yeah, that was silly. That did manage to work out for her. It's another to, like, the worst thing about Todd Akin was that he was too conservative and had some unseemly views on abortion. He wasn't like literally was not literally at an insurrection attempt, and was not literally running on overturning an election result and deregistering all voters.
Yeah, no, I think it was a bad idea. I think it was dumb. I think if we're going to run a campaign on the Republican Party being a threat to democracy, we shouldn't be supporting Republicans who are threats to democracy, even if those things don't end up mattering. And I don't think they did. But even still, even more if it doesn't matter, you don't do it. You don't do it. You don't waste the money. You don't waste the effort. It was bad. It was stupid. Was it impactful? I don't know. But it was dumb, and it was dumb.
It's just another topic that we'll see coming up here on the night. So we're gonna end out here in about 10 minutes here, folks. Like I said, we are gonna end here in about 10 minutes as we continue to see very little sides here of what's happening in Maryland.
Do we want to play taps for Francho before we?
Oh, we will. I will play taps for Francho before we leave. But you know what? Actually, we're going to get off here in 3 minutes. So I want to hear final thoughts from you guys here because it looks like we're not going to get much else here. So final thoughts from you guys from the state of Maryland tonight.
Maryland, fix your voting, please, for God's sake. I'm tired.
Eric?
Twitter is not real life. That's if I had to sum it up in four words, that would be it. Because boy, was that embarrassing for Foldy. I'm not sure how Smug is gonna spin this either, because this is pretty embarrassing overall.
It will be really funny if Foldy somehow manages to pull off the miracle and win with election day votes.
That's not happening. Right?
No, probably not. It would be very funny.
He's losing by about 2,100 votes in the election day total. So, according to the Secretary of State. Ooh. So let's play some taps here for Peter Francho, and that's what's going to lead us out here tonight, folks. So one last taps tonight for Maryland Comptroller Peter Francho as the seat he has waited almost 2 decades for flies away from him. All right. R.I.P. Peter Francho. You have gone. Good luck, buddy. But yeah, So that's going to be all from us tonight, folks. This is a very unexciting night as it is in Maryland. But 2 weeks, folks, in 2 weeks, the biggest primary night of the year that I think we have left, I believe. August 2nd. Boy, oh boy, it's going to be a fun one. You're going to want to be here for this one. Lots of key primary states going on. Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington, all in one night.
That's a fun
Krasnodar will sadly not be there again, but we do have someone new who might potentially be coming in. He's suddenly free of prior activities, and we might see one of our other big name contributors coming on that night. I know he was mentioned in the chat a couple times tonight, so I think some of you guys will enjoy seeing that tonight as we get in here. But obviously we'll be back on Friday to recap the results with Elections Weekly. We'll be then the next Friday, and then of course Tuesday, August 2nd. You're going to want to set your calendar for that, folks. Going to want to like and subscribe here on YouTube. You're going to want to follow us on Twitch. You're going to want to follow us on Twitter, wherever you're watching from. We'll be there. August 2nd will be our next election night live stream. Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington. Again, going to be another hell of a fun night, folks, when that night comes. But otherwise, for tonight here in Maryland, we are done. Thank you all very, very much for staying with us, especially considering there's only one state. And before we leave here, Decision Desk HQ has officially called that 6th District Republican primary for Neil Parrott. But otherwise, folks, we're going to have I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. We will see you guys hopefully on for Friday night for Elections Weekly. We'll see you the next Friday for another section of Elections Weekly. But then again, like, subscribe, follow wherever you're from.
And thanks to our new followers on Twitch. Thanks to our new viewers and followers on Twitch. I don't know how much of our audience is. We're on there. I saw us having a few on there. So thank you guys for watching.
Yeah. Anyways, you are going to want to pencil in your calendar for August 2nd. That's going to be a big night. Be ready when that night comes. But for tonight, thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your evening.